Drugs have had a negative impact on society pretty well since history has began, and it continues today. In America, in particular, one of the first real big outbreaks in drug abuse happened post Civil War. Um, Veterans were recovering from injuries, old battlefield injuries and wounds. Therefore, a lot of morphine was prescribed. During this time period when the morphine was being prescribed, it was being prescribed pretty freely. A lot of them became addicted, and it carried into the early 1900s. About that time, traveling salesmen were really big, and they would sell elixirs, and they would go from town to town trying to sell their cure-all products. This caused about an estimated 5% of the population to be addicted to drugs at the 1900 kind of mark, and it carried over really. The reason that these elixirs caused drug abuse a problem was most of the elixirs contained morphine. However, the people that were buying these elixirs were unaware of that, so they consider that time period to be accidental as far as the dependency on those drugs. That was trying to be kind of cut out by the government in 1906. They passed the Pure Food and Drug Act. This act basically was to try to eliminate the drugs that were in food products that Americans would consume and be unaware of what they were consuming. One of the biggest industries that affected was actually soda. Coca-Cola is probably one of the biggest ones that most of you all are familiar with that were affected by this act, because Coca-Cola contained cocaine. This act was to help get rid of that, and most sodas actually during that time period actually did contain cocaine. In 1914, the Harrison Act was passed, and this was also to go after illicit drugs, but more in a way of getting the people that were responsible for tax evasion. So it was kind of a way around it. You know, the gangsters and the mob and those people. That's who that act really played a big role against. Then we kind of get into marijuana use, and then several states that decided to ban it early on. The big reason that this was occurring was, at that time, marijuana was coming in from Mexico, and they kind of saw the Mexican people as being wild and crazy, and they thought this was a direct, directly due because of the marijuana use. So several states actually banned marijuana before the federal government did, and it's kind of interesting that one of the first states to ban it was Colorado, and now everybody's pretty aware that Colorado is actually one of the only states to have legalized it again, so everything's kind of coming around and running its course. So I thought that was kind of an interesting fact. Probably, though, right now, the drug that most affects us is probably methamphetamines, especially for most of us in this class. We're from Missouri, and Missouri, unfortunately, has got the title of meth capital. Between 2011 and 2012, Missouri averaged nearly 2,000 meth busts per year, and that far exceeds any other state. They kind of consider this area of the Midwest the meth belt, and they refer to Missouri as the buckle. That's not a good distinction. So most of us are well aware of the meth problems and stuff because we're from Missouri. Some of the other drugs that are problems are cocaine, but maybe not as much as it was 10 or even 20 years ago. And a lot of that has to do with just the sheer cost. Methamphetamines, people get a greater high for cheaper, but they're also putting, probably even more toxic stuff in their body, so it's got a negative effect as well. So another drug that's big, has got a big problem with is ecstasy, or the party drugs. A lot of people have kind of went the way of the party drug, and that's created a whole new negative impact because people try to reformulate things, and let's face it, some of the people that are doing that maybe aren't the best chemists, and in turn it's caused people to die because it wasn't made correctly. And then The other drug that I was going to talk about is your prescription drugs. Prescription drugs, drug abuse is probably one of the biggest problems. Painkillers in particular. People have injuries and then they go take these painkillers and then become hooked. So, and they do it initially it's a legal thing, so they get addicted before they even really know what's going on. It's again goes back to in the early 1900s accidental addiction, and that's no different with the painkillers. Most people don't get on the painkillers to illicitly use them. It's through accidental addiction, and that really is unfortunate. But the government has got things in place. There's programs to help people with addiction problems, and then in school they're starting. They have been doing awareness programs ever since I was young. The DARE program and things of that nature. So I think they're moving in the right direction as far as trying to cut back on drug use and abuse, and it's up to us to educate, especially the youth, and let them know, the negative impacts of these drugs. So in conclusion, we talked about the history of drug use in America. We also spoke about the current drug issues and the meth issues that are right here on our own front door, with the methamphetamine use. And that's really, like I said, one of the most unfortunate things. But I appreciate your time and have a good day. Thank you.